Friday, I found it to be very interesting and kind of noteworthy because you know how you keep hearing that President Trump is a multi-billionaire? That's right, not just a millionaire, a billionaire, a multi-billionaire, but that he didn't do that by himself. That was all because his dad gave him money and he grew up privileged. If that's the case, why did President Trump grow up in this home, which is the focus of our opening segment before we get started with the real news?
Well, happening now, President Donald Trump's New York childhood home is up for sale. It's located in the neighborhood of Jamaica Estates. The 5-bedroom English Tudor-style house comes with a staggering $3 million price tag, but the current owner is going about selling it in a very unique way. The real estate company behind the listing wants Trump supporters to donate what they can to a GoFundMe page. Once supporters reach the $3 million mark, the property will then be donated to President Donald Trump as a parting gift when he leaves office.
It's more likely that 3 million people will pay $1, or 1 million people will pay $3, or 300,000 people will pay $10, than one person will pay $3 million.
Officials say the president can then do as he pleases with the home, either donating it to a family or to charity, or turning it into a museum.
5 bedrooms in a very nice area, for sure, especially in the time that President Trump grew up. 5 bedrooms was a big home. But does that look like the home of someone who grew up to be a billionaire because their dad was a super rich guy? Doesn't seem like it to me. But of course, this wouldn't be the first time that the Marxist media and the left have misrepresented not just President Trump, but President Trump's origins. But once again, what can we expect from a TDS, Trump derangement syndrome riddled press and their narratives that they've been trying to spin ever since President Trump came down that escalator and said, we are going to take it to the deep state. Folks, I thought that was an interesting story and I wanted to leave with that, but let's hit the introduction and get this started.
Welcome to Open Source News. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on the notifications bell so you don't miss out on real news.
Welcome to Open Source News. I am your brother and your host, BCP. I hope you're having a great start to your weekend. This is the later edition. Please receive a hug from all of us here at OSN. We are a family operation and we consider you our family as well. Adoption is very easy, folks. Just hit that subscribe button. And if you haven't done so yet, which I know a lot of you, as soon as you see the video, you hit the like button, and we appreciate it. But if you haven't done it yet, please hit that like button. It really helps us out. Our channel right now is going through that cycle again where we're not showing up as readily and it's not as easy to find our channel. But when you hit that like button, it forces the algorithm here on YouTube to at least show this to a few more people that are looking for this type of content. And if you're wanting continued coverage on what is going on in the courts, you're going to want to follow me on Twitter and Parler. That's where you'll find my reporting on that topic. With that out of the way, let's get right into the stories. The first thing I want to do is I want to follow up on breaking and developing news stories that we've covered over the last few episodes. I want to show you, to start off on a positive note, a follow-up to the report that I showed you about yet another peace deal that President Trump has brokered, this time between Israel and the Kingdom of Morocco. And this is Prime Minister Netanyahu talking about this and thanking our duly elected and beloved President Donald John Trump for his role in that historic event yet again happening in the Middle East.
I've always believed that this historic day would come. I've always worked for it. I want to first thank President Trump for his extraordinary efforts to expand peace, to bring peace to Israel and the peoples of the Middle East. President Trump, the people of Israel and the state of Israel will be forever indebted to you for your magnificent efforts on our behalf. I want to thank, too, the King of Morocco, King Mohammed VI, for taking this historic decision to bring a historic peace between us. The people of Morocco and the Jewish people have had a warm relationship in the modern period. Everybody knows the tremendous friendship shown by the kings of Morocco and the people of Morocco to the Jewish community there. And hundreds of thousands of these Moroccan Jews came to Israel, and they form a human bridge between our two countries and our two peoples of sympathy, of respect, of fondness and love.
Let's keep it real, folks. I am a big fan of President Trump because of his peace and prosperity, not just message, not just messaging, not just campaigning, but his work and bringing to pass those two ends. Peace, we have not been involved in any new conflicts under President Trump, and prosperity, and being a liaison, being a bridge, being a peacemaker, a deal maker in the Middle East. How often do you hear, really, world leaders talk about fondness, affection, and love between two countries? As I covered before, there is a big, thriving community in Morocco of Jews, and when Israel became a state in the late 40s, a lot of those Moroccan Jews were some of the first to settle in Israel. So there has been a, what would I call it, an unofficial fondness, open dialogue between the two countries. But thanks to President Trump's leadership, this is now all being formalized, including many of the same things we've seen in the other peace deals that President Trump has brokered between Arab countries and, of course, Israel.
I think that this is the foundation on which we can now build this peace. We'll resume liaison offices quickly between Israel and Morocco and work as rapidly as possible to establish full diplomatic relations. We'll also institute direct flights between Morocco and Israel and Morocco, giving this bridge of peace an even more solid foundation. This will be a very warm peace. Peace has never, the light of peace on this Hanukkah day has never shone brighter than today in the Middle East.
Think about it. Not that it was necessarily tough, but now you can expand your travel plans. You could go to, let's say, Europe and go to Spain, go to southern Spain, then go down, see Gibraltar, cross over to Morocco, have some fun time in Tangiers and Marrakesh, and then fly directly to Israel. I mean, it seems like a small thing, but literally we're seeing the bridge of peace throughout this region, and that is a beautiful thing. And I'm a Christian, but whether you believe like I do or don't, it doesn't matter here. I think all human beings, even to my agnostic and atheist brothers and sisters, should be able to appreciate bridges of peace. What a great thing. Now I want to follow up also on the report from the previous episode about the defunding of law enforcement in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and let's just hear from the people there what they really think. Let's just not listen to the politicians, especially those outside of the area. Let's not talk about pundits and people's opinions that do not have to deal with the aftermath or the consequences of what's going on there with their $8 million reduction in funding for the police. Let's listen to the people who this is actually going to affect.
Another controversial move in Minneapolis. The city council there stripped $8 million from the police budget despite record crime rates. Our next guest knows all too well the effects the increase in violence has had on that community after her salon was burned down during the riots in May. The owner of Flora's Hair Designs, Flora Westerbrooks, joins us now from the Twin Cities. What do you think of the police, who everybody, of course, needs, having $8 million taken from their budget? That wouldn't seem that that would be a good idea when you got crime going through the roof, which you do.
Oh, gosh, that's terrible. I don't think they should cut that $8 million from the police department. No. We need the police. We need them. I feel less safe. A lot of my friends I talk to, and they're not feeling safe right now, and they're not, with this cutting the budget down to $8 million. They're not with that either. Neither am I.
Yeah.
Because we need protection here.
Yet another example of the poor policies of the Marxist Democrats and their elitism where they don't care how it actually affects the people. They don't even consult the actual people who will have to bear the consequences and the cause and effect, or the effects of their bad policies. And what about the Democrats actually caring about the people of color and their chance for advancement? The best way to advance in America, folks, and that is why people want to come here from all countries, is entrepreneurism, is to have your own business, to be the pilot, the engineer, to be the navigator of your own destiny and your own opportunities. And that is absolutely possible in a capitalistic society like the United States of America. So here you have Flora, a woman of color, who felt she feels less safe now they're cutting back the budget. And this is someone whose business burned down before the budget cuts even took place, when they had police officers. How much worse is it going to be for her? How much worse is it going to be for the people in the community? And here's something else that people on the left, when they're always trying to virtual signal and tell we, and I'm going to pull the card here, what we people of color need to think and how we need to be grateful for the Democrats and vote for them. What about the fact that now more Black-owned and Hispanic-owned businesses in these areas are not even going to open? The ones that are there are going to be in danger, are going to close, move, and what's that going to do? Or if they can't move, what does that do? That adds impoverishment and takes away opportunities from people of color in their own neighborhoods. And it also stifles, it de-incentivizes other entrepreneurs from investing in their own neighborhoods. What a shame. Especially, and perhaps this is why the Democrats are championing this. One of their many examples of cutting off the nose to spite the face. Do not forget that President Trump has been behind the opportunity zones, something that he worked with Black leaders, with people of color in the inner cities. I believe that was with Tim Scott as well. These zones where they're in predominantly minority neighborhoods that are impoverished, an incentive for businesses to open in those neighborhoods. But if they don't feel safe, they're not going to open, depriving, once again, people of color of entrepreneurial opportunities, and for workers, job opportunities. And when you have a neighborhood where you own a business and people in that neighborhood work in that business, there's a pride that comes from and to that neighborhood that can't be created from outside sources. But once again, thanks to bad policies by Democrats, this is going to negatively affect people of color in Minneapolis. So there you go, yet another failed policy. Now let's move on to another follow-up I want to do here. And of course, this has to do with Eric Swalwell and his Chinese connections.
Let's talk about China. Joining me here is Gordon Chang. He's an expert on all things China. I want to get right into this news. It just seems something out of a movie or a spy novel. But reportedly, a Chinese spy worked as a fundraiser for Congressman Eric Swalwell. Now, Eric also ran for president in the Democratic primary this go-round. And reportedly, he had an intimate relationship with a woman named Christine Fang, who helped raise money for him. And it turns out she is a spy. She is part of a Chinese political intelligence operation. And there have just been lots of red flags going off about this.
China is our enemy, and they are real. They have got an economy that's arguably as large as ours. They have a military that's arguably as large as ours. And what just happened with the Swalwell situation is kind of a wake-up call that this is just how in-depth the Chinese will go to try to infiltrate American influence. So this is very troubling. Number one, because he's a member of the United States Congress. Number two, because he serves on the Intelligence Committee, has tremendous access to information.
And the congressman has said that, she left the country in 2015. He hasn't been in contact with her for years, for half a decade at this point. Should we believe him?
Well, Christine Fang has left the U.S. She apparently left abruptly, which is an indication that she was working with Chinese intelligence.
And folks, I don't want you to have a sense of a false dichotomy here that this is only the Democrats, even though it's mostly the Democrats, at least at this point, as far as we know, that are so entangled with China. But China plays to, they play to win. And they know that the divide and conquer totally works, and they play both sides of the aisle.
And it was not just Eric Swalwell she was in contact with. She was in contact with about 3 or 4 other members of Congress and a couple of Midwestern mayors. Apparently, she's had sexual relationships with. China's intelligence operations in the U.S. are massive. They're directed against both parties.
And Congressman, you're a brave man for saying that, because over the past 4 years, it seems like whenever someone brings up allegations against China, they were said that they were deflecting away from Russia, something like that. And don't get me wrong, I mean, Russia does have an at times adversarial relationship with the U.S. interests, but nothing compared to what China's been doing for the past couple of decades, whether it be on the trade front, the coronavirus front, human rights abuses. I mean, is the United States not taking this threat seriously enough, or has it not been over the past couple of years?
What we have got to do is have a national conversation about how we end this. And this very well may be something we need to start closing more Chinese consulates, because Christine Fang was actually working with an out of the San Francisco consulate of China.
In other words, she was not just a mole or a spy out there. She was actively reporting back to Beijing, back to the Communist Chinese Party via the consulate in San Francisco. And the Chinese have been very, very active in intelligence and in, quite honestly, attacks on our country in all forms, except maybe overtly. And that's why a lot of people are still not awake or awakened to the danger that China poses. And you wonder why the consulates have been closing and why there's been this tit for tat and back and forth between China and the Trump administration. The Trump administration knows what they've been up to for a very long time and was putting a stop to it, and China doesn't like it. Forget Russia, Russia, Russia. Not that they're not a threat, but their threat level is nowhere near as high as the threat level we have from the Chinese Communist Party.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is warning of the dangers China poses for our country, as many questions linger over the relationship a Biden administration would have with China. Many believe it will be too cozy.
Russia is nothing compared to China. Their GDP is roughly the size of the state of Texas. China, on the other hand, has an economy as large as ours, and they are bent on destructing the U.S. They want to get rid of the American currency. They want to get rid of our way of life. And we have an extra problem there because so many of our companies, our technology companies, reside there now. And so this is a very serious issue for America. And Russia is nothing compared to China. Our threat is China. It is not Russia.
Over the last few days, the emphasis has been by Mike Pompeo, the infiltration of China into our institutions, I should say, of higher learning. Something that, once again, OGs, longtime subscribers and BCP family members on this channel will know that we've talked about at length here. How not only are our children being indoctrinated by Leninist, Marxist, Bolshevik ideas from the Soviet Union Revolution and all of the Latin American takeovers by Marxists, the same thinking and teaching that have led to suffering in Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba are being sold to our children as the cure for capitalism, as if capitalism was a bad thing. It's crony capitalism and capitalism outside the laws that is a problem, not capitalism in and of itself. But we're seeing here that it's not just in the lower, the K through 12 infiltration. We have the actual infiltration of Chinese Communist Party money, influence, and power to our supposedly best and brightest at the universities. And Pompeo is making sure that everyone within the sound of his voice is aware of this danger.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo accusing universities in the U.S. of caving to Chinese money. Pompeo says the Chinese have used universities as a way to steal technology for years, either by planting student spies or by paying off professors in charge of critical technology advancements. Now, the Trump administration changed the global debate on China, cracking down on the stealing of intellectual property. Now, tariffs brought by the Chinese to the table for a phase 1 trade deal.
Also out there making the rounds in a surrogate for Trump type of way is the former acting director of national intelligence, Rick Grinnell, saying the same thing about China and their ties to the universities.
They have infiltrated academia as well as politics, and something needs to be done.
Now we know the Justice Department is now looking into Hunter Biden for possible tax fraud related to overseas dealings associated with the Chinese. Emails show the connection with the Chinese businessman who possibly has ties to the Communist Party.
And that is a perfect segue into the news regarding the Department of Justice, Joe Biden's son Hunter, and our Attorney General AG Bill Barr. A do-nothing, either swamp creature or swamp cover-upper, which really, in my book, amounts to the same thing.
As the Wall Street Journal reports, Attorney General Bill Barr knew about the numerous investigations looking into Hunter Biden's business and financial dealings since at least this spring and worked to keep the probes out of public view during the election. A spokeswoman for the Attorney General declined to comment this morning. Barr has been under intense pressure from the top.
We've got to get the Attorney General to act. He's got to act, and he's got to act fast. He's got to appoint somebody. This is major corruption, and this has to be known about before the election. This has to be done early, so the Attorney General has to act.
Fox has reported at least some of the Hunter Biden investigation dates back to 2018.
A stunning new report that Attorney General Bill Barr knew about 2 federal investigations into Hunter Biden's business dealings and had known since at least the spring. However, worked to keep that information from the public as the election loomed. That's according to the Wall Street Journal.
Folks, if this Wall Street Journal article is correct, and I'm going to go through it with you, it's not just a matter of AG Bill Barr knowing about the investigation. He should know about it. This is a high profile figure, a high profile case, and he heads the Department of Justice. No, what the Wall Street Journal article is alleging in their reporting is that Barr, just like the media, was working to keep this information out from public view during the election, which in fact is an in-kind assistance to Joe Biden and a detriment to President Trump. As you recall, we now know that a lot of people are just now learning about Hunter Biden, and many have said that that would have changed their vote. Now, you can believe the official narrative on how many votes Joe Biden actually got, but if you are in the know and you know the real number he got, the landslide victory would have been even more of a slaughter had these people known the truth before they went to the ballot. Those few people that actually really did cast a vote for Joe.
President Trump tweeted this. Now it turns out that my phone call to the president of Ukraine, which many, including me, have called perfect, as even better than that. Predicted Biden corruption, said to call the Attorney General who perhaps knew of the corruption during the impeachment hoax?
What President Trump may be saying here is that he knew that AG Bill Barr knew when it came to the time of impeachment about the true nature of Hunter's crimes. And perhaps that is why the Ukrainians were invited to talk to AG Bill Barr, perhaps so it would be in the open and not hidden. Let me reread this tweet to you. I think Harris didn't. She's great at what she does, and I'm terrible at reading, but I think something was lost here. Now it turns out that my phone call to President of Ukraine, which many including me have called perfect, was even better than that. I predicted Biden corruption, said to call the Attorney General, who perhaps knew of the corruption during the impeachment hoax. And there we go. President Trump at least suggesting, if not straight up telling us, that AG Bill Barr knew about the Bidens and Ukraine and everything else. And He knew that for a very long time. Very, very sad. Now, even if this story is untrue, even if the story is wrong, that AG Bill Barr wasn't actively hiding this story from the public, we still have issues here, because that is essentially what he did, whether his intention was to hide or not. This information had to come out and should have been made public, and by not doing it, he essentially picked sides and played favorites. So let's jump into this Wall Street Journal article, and you decide once again. Barr worked to keep the Hunter Biden probes from public view during election. The Attorney General knew for months about investigation into Biden's business and financial dealings. Attorney General William Barr has known about a disparate set of investigations involving Hunter Biden's business and financial dealings since at least this spring, a person familiar with the matter said, and worked to avoid their public disclosure during the heated election campaign. The federal scrutiny dates back to 2018, the people familiar with the matter said. So 2 years, nothing. Nothing happened in 2 years. Nothing was going to happen anyway. There's probably some patriots trying to keep this alive and a whole bunch of swamp creatures at the Department of Justice and the FBI putting a kibosh on it every single time there was any kind of advancement in the investigation.
So let me tell you what grassroots fundraiser means. Grassroots fundraiser in this.
Investigators try to keep the case out of public view by taking few visible steps in the weeks before the November election, recognizing the impact their work could have, said one of the people familiar with the matter. Okay, well, that's good enough. It was a few weeks before November, but they were working on this since 2018. And Mr. Barr was aware of the investigations involving Hunter before the spring. Way ahead of time, he could have said something, done something, signaled something that would have been full disclosure for the American people. If there is a crook about to go in the White House, politics and policy be damned. The people should know about this. Hunter Biden, the person said, though it wasn't clear when or how he first learned of the inquiry. So they're saying that Barr knew about it since at least spring, but they're not sure exactly how he came about knowing. Well, he is the head of the Department of Justice as the Attorney General. He's seeing all kinds of information all the time. And I'm sure this is something that was brought to his attention by the Patriots in the DOJ, probably early on. On Thursday night, Mr. Trump, President Trump, Wall Street Journal, not Mr. Trump, I told you got to be careful of their bias, tweeted his frustration about the Justice Department and the FBI's failure to disclose the Hunter Biden investigation earlier. Why didn't the fake news media, the FBI, and the DOJ report the Biden matter before the election? Justice Department guidelines advise investigators against taking overt actions in a run-up to an election so as not to be seen as affecting the outcome. Oh, you mean like the FBI did with the solid that they did for Hillary Clinton, admitting, yeah, she may have done some stuff, but no reasonable prosecutor would take this on? Or you mean like Attorney General Loretta Lynch meeting with Bill Clinton on the tarmac in Arizona? Is that what you're talking about?
My conclusion was and remains, no reasonable prosecutor would bring this case. No reasonable prosecutor would bring the second case in 100 years focused on gross negligence.
By the way, one of the people that said that there totally was enough information and evidence and they would have prosecuted Hillary Clinton is the interim and short-acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker. Can you imagine how different things may have been, not saying they would have been, may have been, had Matt Whitaker, a guy who said, yes, I would have prosecuted Hillary, had been the Attorney General all this time instead of Bill Barr, who apparently, like Christopher Wray, cares more about the reputation of his Department of Justice, like Chris Wray does the FBI, than serving we the people. I've already made that point, folks, but I don't go by what you say. I go by what you do. And yes, I gave Bill Barr, for those of you who have been here a long time, a lot of optimism. He was saying the right things and appeared like he was doing the right things. And maybe was being slow and methodical, but methodical nonetheless. But now his methodical nature has served the Bidens and the Democrats and not the rule of law and justice.
I know that's been a source of some confusion for folks. That's just the way it is. I know the Department of Justice. I know no reasonable prosecutor would bring this case. I know a lot of my former friends are out there saying they would. I wonder where they were the last 40 years, because I'd like to see the cases they brought on gross negligence. Nobody would, nobody did.
Once again, AG Bill Barr and these people coming in, Christopher Wray, they're swamp creatures cover-uppers, or at the very least, they are more concerned with keeping the pristine, which is not even pristine, name and reputation of their respective organizations than they are for working for the people, for we the people, and for administering justice and the rule of law.
Republicans have been pressing Barr now for months to investigate Hunter Biden's dealings and any potential involvement of his father, Joe Biden. Attorney and Fox News contributor Emily Campagno. Emily, because of your legal background, I'm going to lean on you hard with this first one. What does all of this mean in the big picture for Attorney General Bill Barr?
Well, I will start with the Attorney General. So first of all, if he had announced this investigation or, in fact, taken visible steps in the run-up leading to the election, then that would have gone against DOJ guidelines. And I know there's a lot of crowing about, well, look, if we had known about this, then the vote would have been different. But to me, the larger point here is that it is clear they are taking painstaking steps to preserve the integrity of these investigations.
Sorry, Emily, that's optimistic and naive. It wasn't about nonpartisanship. It was about protecting the swamp. Had this been an isolated incident, perhaps you could make your case. But time and time again, the elites in Washington commit crime after crime, their families commit crime after crime, and nothing happens to them because their co-conspirators are in law enforcement, in the Department of Justice, and the FBI covering for them. They're one big cabal of criminal crooks, and they cover for each other. That is the whole point of being in the cabal. You get to have power and money, and you get to commit your crimes with impunity because you cover for each other. And that is why we need a major shakeup, or we need a whole different part of the government to come in and enforce the law. AG Bill Barr knew, didn't do anything, and his inaction in fact, was an action in favor of the Democrats and the swamp. What are your thoughts, folks? Put it down below. I appreciate you being here. God bless you. God bless your families. God bless our duly elected